Well, good evening everybody, and welcome to Fylde Council Cabinet meeting. And first of all, may I ask for any declarations of interest?
Yes, Chairman, I have an interest in the item about Fylde.
Yes.
I shall be leaving the room.
Thank you.
Will you be coming back?
Thank you. Any others? No, thank you very much indeed. And confirmation of the minutes of the 27th of May. Are we all happy with those? We all sure, yes? Thank you. In which case I'll sign them. Thank you. And any urgent items, please, Chief Exec?
There's no urgent items this evening, Chairman.
Thank you. Item 4 is on page 7 of your papers and is the Policy Development Scrutiny Committee. And Councillor Wilson, good evening to you.
Good evening. This is the minutes of the Policy Development Scrutiny Committee, which met on the 24th of April. We had two agenda items. One was the residence survey, and after discussion, you will note the recommendations that are on page 8 of your agenda papers to undertake comparison work to benchmark Fylde's results against other authorities, if it is available, to redesign the questionnaire and focus on the services of the Council that they are directly responsible for delivering, and to explore different methods of access to and advertising of the questionnaire so that more people will actually fill it out. The second item was the Fylde Rural Housing Needs Survey, and this had been to committee before, but there were questions, and so it was brought back. And the majority recommendations were to approve the final report and conclusions of the Fylde Rural Housing Needs Survey and the findings to be used to assist in future policy development, to present the findings to a future meeting of the parish liaison meeting, and to hold further community information events organized with town and parish councils and key partners to disseminate the results of the survey, provide general housing advice, and raise awareness of the piece of research and how it will be used for going forward. However, if you will also notice, there is a minority report to be presented this evening on this topic.
Any observations from members? No? Dan?
Only the reference has been made by the scrutiny that the minority report of the authors is present with us, and we agreed the other night that the author of the report can come to the table to present his views before I make my contribution.
Thank you. And could I therefore ask Councillor Duffy to present his minority report? And thank you, Councillor Wilson.
You're welcome.
Thanks. Good evening, Councillor Duffy.
Good evening. I would have worn a suit tonight if I'd known I was going to be presenting at the table, but I didn't. So, yeah, just briefly. I mean, I assume you've all read the report. So, briefly, the survey was 13,500 were sent out with 3,839 responses. Part 2 of the report, which is the part in question, really, was intended to identify the number of affordable homes that would be needed, The criteria used for deciding whether somebody needed an affordable home, 3 criteria: total net income, the amount respondents could afford as a mortgage, and the maximum weekly outgoings for housing costs. The people that can support the minority report believe that there are 3 flaws in the methodology used. To calculate the total number that would require affordable housing using the criteria I just mentioned, the number of people who answered the relevant questions were added up and then an average taken, so the total was 222. It was rounded down to 200 from 222 for no apparent reason. It also didn't really take into account the fact that not everybody who completed Part 2 actually answered those questions. So for the 3 criteria, of the 555 who completed some of the questions in Part 2, only 254 answered the question about total net income. 178 of the 555 answered the questions about how much they could afford as a mortgage, and only 236 answered the question about monthly outgoings. So in all cases, it was less than half of the 555 who answered those questions. So the first flaw really is we don't understand the logic for taking the average, and we don't understand the reason for rounding it down to 200. The second flaw, as we see it, is that we don't believe that that even just the methodology used doesn't take into account the fact that not everybody answered all the relevant questions. Now that may be fine. There might be reasons why that's not relevant, but if that's the case, then somewhere in the methodology it should be stated, justification for not allowing for the fact that not everybody answered the question. Sorry about so many negatives in that sentence. But probably the main flaw really is that when the number of 200 affordable homes was arrived at, it then wasn't scaled up to take account of the fact that not every one of the 13,500 who got the survey actually returned it. You'll see in the minority report, I illustrated that by saying, let's imagine that question 1 of the survey was, do you live in rural Fylde? If all 3,839 respondents had answered yes, would we then say that 3,839 people lived in Fylde? We wouldn't. We would scale it up to cater for that difference between the number of respondents and the total number of surveys issued. So if all those arguments were accepted as valid, then the assessed affordable housing need would be at least 893, and that's 178 affordable dwellings a year. That's a far bigger figure than the 40 that was arrived at. It's bigger than was identified in the SHMA. So basically that third point is the main one. The other 2 are slightly less important. And that's it really. The survey as a whole was a good piece of work. We all fully appreciate the amount of effort that the officers have put into creating the report. No criticism there at all. And also we realise that in the past that kind of thing may have been done, farmed out to somebody outside the council at an additional cost. So it was good that the officers did undertake the work themselves, and we do appreciate that.
Well, I thank you for that piece of work, Councillor Duffy. And Councillor Buckley?
I'd just like to ask a question, if I may. Is it your view, or the view of the Minority Report, that the figure should be the 893, or are you just using that as an illustrative way to argue about the methodology, or are you saying the figure should be 893?
No. Thanks. I should have made that clear in the report, that We definitely are not saying that that should be the figure. The point is that that figure is far too high, and therefore it's the methodology that was lacking rather than, we're definitely not saying we need that number of affordable homes. Okay.
Thank you. Councillor Fylde.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Charlie, for that presentation. I have some sympathy with some of the points raised by the Minority Report. I just want to clarify that we are all in receipt of the actual Fylde Rural Housing Needs Survey report that was published on the 24th of April. If you don't have that, it would be very difficult to appreciate the points that Charlie has just made, Councillor Duffy has just made when addressing Council. And I will be, if you just turn to paragraph 17 now, I will, in preparation for when I arrive at it. Again, Mr. Chairman, I think I need to give a very brief background, and I mean very brief because people start pulling their faces if it's not too brief. A very brief background to this agenda item. I think we all realise that the local authorities have a statutory duty to produce a strategic housing market assessment, which we refer to as a SMAR. This should provide robust, definitive evidence for the Council to describe Fylde's housing needs. This we have done, and it has been adopted. And it was adopted prior to the publication of the in-house Fylde Rural Housing Needs Survey, which in itself attempts to provide up-to-date evidence by using a questionnaire resident response methodology. The policy scrutiny recommendations of the 24th of April are described on page 12 of our agenda papers this evening. So if you see them, there are 3 recommendations as described. And I draw attention to the recommendation number 1, that the findings be used to assist in future policy development. Mr. Chairman, I think it's obvious that any evidence that influences policy development must be sound and robust. Listening to the criticisms and comments made by Councillor Duffy, there is obvious need for further clarification, and he illustrates 3 areas of concern. 1, the survey assumes that the majority of residents who did not respond did so simply because they had no input to the question of housing need. However, in questionnaires of this nature, we all know that there are many reasons for non-respondents. In paragraph 17, as illustrated again by Councillor Duffy of the 24th of April, the various figures are simply averaged out to give an annual figure of 222. Councillor Duffy promotes an argument that you should use the highest figure of 254. And finally, if the methodology gives a figure of 222, I agree with him. Why round it down to 200? If the figure is 222, it should be 222 as stated. For these reasons, Mr. Chairman, I make the following recommendations to Cabinet. 1. That Cabinet does not endorse the 3 recommendations of the Policy Scrutiny Report of the 24th of April 2014, but simply to note the report. Secondly, that the Borough Council seek advice from Turley Associates, the authors of the SMAR, on the viability of the methodology and assumptions that form the basis of this in-house Fylde Rural Housing Needs Survey. And finally and thirdly, that Turley Associates indicate whether or not the conclusions of the Fylde Rural Housing Needs Survey are complementary or contradictory to the evidence described in the SMAR. So I move those recommendations to endorsement by Cabinet.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other comments from members? We all in favour of that action? Yes. Thank you very much indeed. And can I thank you, Councillor Duffy, for the work that you put together with regards to this minority report, and thank you for bringing it to Cabinet this evening.
Okay, thank you.
That will now take us to item 5, which is the medium-term financial strategy, shown on page 16 of your order papers this evening. And good evening, Mr. O'Donoghue.
Good evening, Chairman. This report is the MTFS financial outturn report for 2013-14 financial year. The report outlines the outturn position under 3 main headings: revenue, capital and treasury management. It also outlines the major variations between the latest approved budget and the actual expenditure and quantifies the impact on the Council's reserves. This report was considered at the Policy Development Scrutiny Committee last week. Just before I go into the detail of the report, and I'll explain each of the 3 outturn positions in terms of revenue, capital and treasury management, it's just worth noting that close control of expenditure has been exercised throughout the last financial year. Officers and all officers with budget holder responsibility were instructed by management team to remain prudent and to minimise expenditure commitments and maximise efficiencies and savings wherever possible. And this has led to the underspend position, the favourable outturn position that's presented within the report. In terms of the first part of the report, revenue, expenditure and income, I think the easiest way to explain this is if I can refer you to table 2 on page 20. The first part of that table shows net expenditure for the year, showing a budget of 9.476 million and an outturn position of 8.882 million, which is a favourable variance of 594,000 in terms of net expenditure. In terms of financing for the year, we were budgeting for £10.126 million worth of financing. The outturn position was £10.735 million, again giving a favourable variance of 609,000. Full details of those variances that come back to the 1.203 million are set out in Appendix B. And I think it might just be worth spending a minute or two just looking at Appendix B, if we may, that starts on page 30 of your agenda papers. This shows line by line analysis of the total variances across the council, and I'll just pick out a few of those, a few of the major variances, some of which are as a result of good budget management and some of which are a result of one-off windfalls of income. The first one is the top line on page 30, which is staffing budgets, with a favourable variance outturn of 102,000 on the corporate staffing position across the council. Further down that page, I'll just pick out some of the highlights. Utility costs were underspent as a result of the relatively mild winter in terms of temperature. Fleet costs, again, we have favourable variances on fleet costs as a result of the relatively new fleet that we've got. Onto page 31, the third item up is crematorium income. We are again benefiting from the closure and issues that they have at neighbouring crematoria. So we've had additional income of 105,000, which we may consider as being a one-off item. Over the page on page 32, the top line, there's been a favourable variance on planning appeal costs. Members may remember that we put an additional sum into planning appeal costs, particularly for a number of appeals that were ongoing at Ray Green. Those appeals weren't settled during 13-14, so that £45,000 is being requested to be slipped into 14-15 to cover those appeal costs and to supplement that budget in the new year. Also on page 32, the second item up there, direct revenue financing in respect of Ashton Gardens Depot. There's a favourable variance of £85,000. The report that was considered by Council in December 2012 approved setting aside a budget of £85,000 from revenue to fund that work until capital receipts were received. We have subsequently received capital receipts from the asset disposals, which will go towards funding that, so the £85,000 can be released. So that again is a one-off item, it's not something that will recur. And then finally on page 33 we have items of financing, two significant variances there. The first one relates to a Section 31 grant, as it's called, in respect of business rates of £374,000. Late on in 13-14, the government allocated us and every other authority a one-off grant to compensate for the fact that during the year the government doubled up the amount of small business rate relief that could be awarded to small businesses. That had the impact of reducing the amount of business rates that we got in, and the government gave us this one-off grant which we didn't budget for because it was very late in the year. And the final item on that page relates to business rate retention, additional business rates collected in the year when compared to the budgeted safety net level of £203,000. So those are some of the major variations. If I can then take you back to table 2 on page 20. The bottom section on table 2 sets out a summary of the recommended transfers to reserves which Cabinet are being asked to consider this evening. The first 94,000 is requested to be go into general fund balances to cover slippage, which is identified in another appendix in the report, totaling £94,000. £416,000 is recommended to go into the collection, a new reserve called a collection fund deficit reserve. As a result of the doubling of small business rates relief, the council has got less income into its collection fund, so we've got a deficit on the collection fund, which is why the government gave us the £374,000 one-off grant. But there are timing differences on the collection fund, so it's recommended that we need to set this aside in a specific reserve to meet our share of that deficit on the fund when it becomes due. The next item is the residual additional funding that we've received in, particularly on business rates, that's recommended to go into a funding volatility reserve to protect the council against further fluctuations in central government income. And finally, that leaves a balance of £472,000, which is recommended to go into the capital investment reserve to top up that reserve such that capital expenditure can be considered next year and in future years without the need to borrow. That's a summary in terms of the revenue position. It's just worth noting, in addition to that, in table 3 on the bottom of page 20, the council is still holding some partnership funding which has been received from the LSP for specific schemes, and that money will be carried forward into 14-15 to continue delivering those schemes, but it's just worthy of note. That's the position in terms of revenue. In terms of capital outturn, if you can turn to table 5 on page 23, that shows the summary capital position. The latest estimate for the year was £2.289 million of spend. The net underspend for the year was £112,000, and the lion's share of that relates to slippage items, which are shown in note 2 at the bottom of page 23. There was small slippage on the accommodation project. I think we put a small amount in for windows, which we didn't spend all of it in last year. Some of it slipped into this year. Disabled Facilities Grant, we're requesting slippage of 43,000 because we got some additional funding in from New Fylde Housing at the end of the year, which we were unable to commit and spend. The Sem and Crem pumping station and Fylde Headlands preliminary works were two projects which were slipped, or there's a request to slip those again into 14-15. Over the page on table 6 shows the usable capital receipts position, and the bottom line on that table shows that the closing balance of capital receipts that the council had received but hadn't applied was 898,000. The lion's share of that, 896,000 of that, relates to the disposal of the Derby Road site in Wesham, which is that funding is earmarked obviously for the accommodation project. In terms of the proposed financing for the capital programme, that's set out in table 7 and over, on table 7 that spills over unfortunately onto page 25. So there's some minor slippage in terms of the capital programme, but that's the summary position for capital. And then finally, in terms of treasury management, Budget Council set a treasury management strategy with some treasury management indicators. All of those treasury management indicators have been complied with, and they are set out in Appendix F of the report. Table 8 on page 26 shows that confirms that the council still has borrowing of £3.8 million. No additional borrowing was taken out during the year, and that borrowing is at an average rate of interest of 2.86%. The conclusions in the report are that the outturn position represents an improvement in the council's general fund forecast balances compared with the previous forecast, and that improved position leaves the council well placed to face future uncertainties. In terms of the recommendations in the report, Cabinet are recommended to approve the outturn position for revenue and the slippage which is set out in the report, to approve those earmarked reserves set out and summarised in table 2 that I've explained to you, to note the position in respect of the partnership funding, to approve the capital outturn position, the capital slippage and the proposed financing, and to approve the treasury management outturn report and the prudential indicators. I'm happy to take any questions, Chairman.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Mr O'Donoghue. Great report, great outturn position. Year on year now, as far as I can remember back, we are producing favourable outturns, and we now embark on an annual basis on a budget right-sizing exercise. I just want to have confirmation that that is to continue. And do we still have will it still provide dividends to us? Sometimes we think, well, how much further can we cut back? But we are still finding savings. Some of the large windfall has obviously come from government grants, which are quite rightly being suggested that we set them aside because we know we are committed. We will be having to pay them off, but there are others and still large sums that we are seeing savings throughout the year. And this is the outturn. Within year, we have taken savings as well when the medium-term financial strategy is brought to Cabinet and to Council. So I suppose my question is about the value of budget right-sizing, its continuation, and do we see more to come?
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. We are going to continue with budget right-sizing. It was, as you say, a fruitful exercise. I'll be straight with you. I did have concerns when we were taking some fairly significant sums out of the base budget. There was a point where I was wondering whether we had perhaps gone too far and we might not be delivering underspend like we have. So I've been slightly surprised in a pleasant way, I guess, that prudent budget management continues to happen. I mean, part of that may be as a result of cultural change, whereby perhaps 5 or certainly 10 years ago, maybe budget holders, where they had budget left at the end of the year, were trying to spend that money. I know that there's certainly a change in that mindset, that people are contributing and buying into the corporate position, that savings and underspends and efficiencies are a good thing, and they're not going all out to spend budgets, that they're trying to deliver those savings. Whether it delivers the same level, the right sizing will continue. Whether it delivers the same level of efficiencies and savings in the future, only time will tell. But I'm hopeful that it will, in the light of some of those underspend and savings that we've delivered this year.
Sorry, one further matter to pick up, if I may. You did say at the outset of your presentation that this report has gone to a scrutiny committee, and of course we've not had the benefit of those minutes as yet, but I just wondered if there are any observations from that we should be aware of, and particularly in light of the recommendations, because there are recommendations of what we should do with this outturn and the reserves to put them in. So if there's any news from scrutiny we should be aware of.
Yes, scrutiny, I think it's fair to say, and Councillor Wilson will correct me as the chairman, hopefully, if I'm wrong. I feel it was fairly well received by the scrutiny committee. They did look at it. They didn't have any specific recommendations or comments on the recommendations in the report. There were a number of questions about, for example, just confirmation of the level of borrowing, about investment and how we invest income. There was a specific request to recommend that all staff were thanked for continuing to deliver savings and to seek efficiencies and to remain prudent. But other than that, there were no other recommendations from the scrutiny committee. It was fairly well received and accepted on face value.
Thank you very much, that's good to know. And can we, I'm sure as a Cabinet, echo those thanks to all budget holders and to continue the good work that they're doing. It is a really great outturn report, and it just shows how far this council has come with cuts from central funding, but look at what we're delivering, and it's great news, so thank you very much. I'm happy to support proposed recommendations.
Any other observations?
Can I just, on a personal level, say about the partnership fund, and I'm glad that to see that we're still putting the community safety and the CCTV and the food co. I think that's really good with partnership fund and partnership work, and I think it really works well.
Councillor Fylde?
Just to endorse the fact that we should congratulate all our staff. I just turn to Appendix B and see that there were 43 areas of finance, 37 are favourable and 6 are adverse, and I think that's right across the board, isn't it? And it's a fantastic position. It's the crown jewels. It really is. I've never witnessed a report in terms of the finance ever as positive as this one.
Thank you. And I'm delighted to second this report, which is again an excellent position to put Fylde Council in. And I'm correct in saying that we've gone through this budget exercise now and right sizing now for 2 years, and made some considerable savings and favourable outturns as well. I endorse the comments that are made by Councillor Buckley, and can I also sing the praises of all the staff of Fylde Council and the managers and the budget holders, and also your finance team. I equally looked through all the favourable positions and the adverse positions, and I like to see minuses in all those boxes, and it's refreshing. Am I also correct in thinking that, in saying that this year our borrowing requirement will also drop this year from 3.8 million and should reduce somewhat?
Our actual level Sorry, Chair. Our actual level of borrowing is 3.8 million. We are scheduled to make a repayment on that of 1.5 million in December this year, so our actual borrowing will drop to 2.3 million. Our underlying borrowing requirement remains round about £7 million, but we're funding the difference from the cash balances that the council has got. So the actual level of borrowing will fall at the end of this calendar year.
Yeah, that's the position as I understood it. So it's a great outturn position, and again a further endorsement of one of the first things I said to Chief Exec when he was appointed, to try and ask people to consider the money as if it was their own when it was being spent. And I think this is a clear message that has now changed the mindset of a lot of people throughout Fylde Council, and it's a great position to be in. And I again thank you and your team, Mr. O'Donoghue, for an excellent report. Thank you very much indeed.
Pause a second.
Yeah, proposed by Councillor Buckley and seconded by myself. Are we all in favour? Thank you very much indeed. We'll now take us to page 39 and the car park upgrade and pay and display machines. And good evening, Mr. Walker.
Good evening, Chairman, members. This report details proposals to replace a number of the Council's existing pay and display machines funded from the rolling capital programme budget for car park improvements. The Council currently has 20 car parks, of which 15 are pay and display. On those 15 car parks, there are 26 machines which take payment. 20 of those machines are of our older model, which was originally developed in the 1980s, and many of the machines are in excess of 10 years old. At the start of 2012, we were advised by the company Metric, who supplies the machines, that they were giving notice on the older model of machines that they would give a further 10 years of parts and maintenance. So we have about 8.5 years now to run of machine maintenance and spares on many of our machines. So it's now prudent to consider the future replacement of those 23 machines. As you'll be well aware, many of the car parks are in very exposed locations which receive the corrosive effects of salt, sea, air, as well as sand blown into many of the openings on the machines and causing quite often internal mechanisms to fail and break down. We also are mindful that in taking a decision to change those machines, there has been a change in the way customers wish to pay for different services in the last few years, and there is more of an expectation now to pay by cashless methods, such as by card. And it's important that in taking a decision we try and future-proof those new machines as much as possible. In addition, members will recall at the start of this year you made some changes to the car parking strategy, which introduced multi-day tariffs, which on some car parks now mean that if you stay for 3 nights as a motorhome user at £21, it's a lot of coins to put in a machine, and we should be looking at alternative methods of allowing people to pay. There are alternatives to coins by using banknotes, but the use of banknotes in machines does mean that there is more money potentially kept in those machines before they're emptied. And there is also the issue of the lack of giving change when you pay with notes. So the proposal of these machines, Chairman, is the specification is actually set out in paragraph 11, and that is to use chip and pin technology and also wave and pay technology, and that's where you can make cashless payments for less than £20 by simply waving your card in front of the reader, and it will then debit your card by the amount that you've entered on the machine. I believe that's the future, Chairman. I've not got one myself, but I'm told it is. There are sections in the report which talk about the procurement of that, and there is a procurement framework by the Eastern Shires Purchasing Organisation which is applicable for the purchase of these machines, and we've gone through that framework and have selected the Metric Group as the preferred supplier. And the new machines will be called Metric Elite, replacing the Metric Accents. Those machines are already in use in Blackpool and West Lancashire. The machine itself is a high security model with a high resistance to break-in. And the proposal, Chairman, is to replace 8 of those machines using the £30,000 rolling programme budget you have for car parks. And on the last page of the report, there is a schedule which shows the proposed replacement over 3 years of those machines. The decision tonight, Chairman, is simply to make a decision on year 1, and then we'll come back to you either later this year or earlier next year with the proposals for year 2. Clearly, this budget previously has been used for tarmac works to resurface car parks, and we've made some good progress, as you'll be well aware, in the last 2 or 3 years, and it's anticipated that we won't need to be doing that in the next 2 or 3 years. However, we do reserve the right to come back next year if there is an urgent need to do something on one of our car parks, and maybe delay the second year of the meter replacement for a further year. But as I've said earlier, Chairman, there's 8 years which we have now got to make that decision to replace those machines. I'll take any questions, Chairman, if you have them.
Any questions? Councillor Buckley.
Can I just understand the table on page 42, asked to fund year 1. So when it's got Standard Bank 2, is that there's 2 machines to be done there, and then so for each, so there's 3 in St Anne's Square, is that right? And then
yes.
So in total there's 14 machines being replaced, is that right? And will cost us?
No, sorry, it's 8 machines. The numbers refer to a reference number we've given to those machines at those locations.
Okay.
Yes, there's 23 machines in total, 8, and 7.
8 in year 1,
Yeah.
okay, that's fine. And just to clarify that with the paying by card, which is great, which would definitely suit me, but you can still pay by cash as well?
Yes.
Fine, thanks.
Councillor Little.
Are these the most popular ones, these first 8? Are they the ones that bring in the most revenue? Is that why they're the first ones? Are they the most popular?
Chairman, it's a combination of the use of those machines and the money they take, and also the condition of them. These are thought to be the ones that need to be in urgent need of replacement. And as you'll see, we're not making a complete change of machines on one car park. We're allowing for one machine to be replaced, whilst the older machine stays in place, and then the year after it's picked up.
Yes. Any other questions?
Chairman, I've read this report and I think it's good that we're moving with the times, and I'm wholesale for it.
The task group that was looking at car parking, this was one of the things that came out very highly, was there needed to be another method of paying, and a safer and better way.
Proposed by Councillor Pounder, seconded by Councillor Buckley. Are we all in favour? Thank you. I'm particularly pleased that we're looking to other ways other than cash. I just hope that if you wave your card 2 or 3 times, it doesn't deduct 2 or 3 times the cash for the car park, but I'm sure it doesn't. But thank you very much indeed, Mr. Walker, for that report. That brings us now to page 43, and is Walton Enterprise Zone Phase 1 Master Plan consultation. And Councillor Fiddler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think it's a relatively simple and straightforward item on this evening's agenda. I think we recall 2 years ago, Council approved what we described as a local development order relating to Walton's Enterprise Zone. It was adopted following a comprehensive public consultation process, and now BAE, in conjunction with LCC, or more specifically LEP, have drawn up this draft master plan in the knowledge that it has to conform to the local development order. The master plan is relatively straightforward. It addresses issues of development strategy, design, landscaping, access, its interaction with existing highway network, and the recommendations on page 43 simply the Cabinet is asked to agree that the draft master plan goes out to consultation, and to approve the nature of that consultation process, which is described in this report. And the process is the same, similar to that which was used for the adoption of the local development order.
Thank you very much, Councillor Fiddler. Any other observations? So proposed by Councillor Fiddler. Seconded by Councillor Trelfall. Are we all in favour of that? Thank you very much indeed. Page 71 is the Lowther Gardens Trust, and as Councillor Fazackley has an interest, Councillor Fazackley will leave the room. Thank you. And prior to the report, we have some questions with regards to the report from Councillor Oates, who unfortunately is not able to be with us this evening, but I would still like those questions to be put and the answers given, which will then be forwarded to Councillor Oates. So perhaps it's between the Chief and Exec and I to do a question and answer.
Thank you, Chairman. I spoke to Councillor Oates and said that we would still address the questions. The first, it was actually in 3 parts, but it's all related to the item. Can the Cabinet assure me that the same high standards presently in place within the gardens will be maintained? And can I also be reassured that mechanisms have been put in place to take back control of the gardens if standards should slip?
And the answer being that the legal title is owned by the council, but because of the trust status, the council can only act on the direction of the trust. The council cannot take back control of the gardens. The Park Service undertake the management and maintenance of the gardens at no cost to the trust, and will continue to do so to the current standard, and retain the historic budget for the delivery of these services, including the leisure and technical services functions. The budget is retained by Fylde Council to continue the current service provision and standard. The purpose of the SLA is to confirm those arrangements.
Can the Cabinet also reassure me that any monies paid to the Trust for the maintenance, operations and activities within the site can only be used for those purposes and cannot be valued to support the activities and maintenance of the pavilion?
Thank you. And there are no monies paid to the Trust for maintenance of the gardens, etc. The only direct payment to the Trust is the agreed subsidy in respect of the pavilion operation and income sharing for the games site's car park income. The budget for the management of the gardens, as above, has been retained by Fylde Council and is managed directly by Fylde Council managers and not the trustees. The budget is funded from special expenses levied on Lytham St Anne's. Lowther Gardens has its own cost centre, which is monitored under the Council's corporate financial monitoring system.
Has the Trust taken steps to appoint trustees with horticultural knowledge and experience?
And the Trust are continuing to develop a close working relationship with the Friends of Lowther Gardens. In addition, through the SLA with Fylde Council and their Parks Department, we are developing long-term plans for the future sustainability for the grounds and its planting. These include developing the provision to grow some of our own plants for stocking the grounds and future development with regards to outdoor education facilities. The Friends of Lowther Gardens have expressed an interest in becoming active observers at certain trust meetings, and this provision is being sorted at the moment. Also, an approach has been made to Myerscough College through Paul Thompson to find one of the senior lecturers who would be interested in joining the Trust in the position of grounds trustee. We hope that this approach is successful and we will have such a trustee in post very soon. Until an appointment is made, we will be working very closely with Mark Wilde and his team at Fylde Council, making sure that the Lowther Gardens are a real jewel in the Fylde's crown. And I'll ensure that those copies of those answers will be forwarded to Councillor Rhodes. Thank you. And with regards to the report, thank you again, Mr. Walker.
Thank you, Chairman. It's a fairly brief one, this. The report makes reference to a report which you considered in May 2012 when you approved the heads of terms for a draft service level agreement between the Borough Council and the Lowther Gardens Trust in respect of the operation of the pavilion. And that report contained details of the revenue support on a phased basis being provided by the Borough Council to the Trust in respect of the pavilion up until 2016-17. That report referred to other services which were not included in that service level agreement, which are the subject of this paper this evening. And the intention, Chairman, is that this paper picks up all the remaining services that the Council delivers to Lowther Trust, which is set out in the report. The heads of terms are attached to the report, and they've been prepared and based upon the common objectives agreed between the Council and the Trust. And the cost for delivery, as has been explained, are from existing budgets, and there is no additional cost to Fylde Council. I'll be pleased to take any questions, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Buckley.
It's a question I'd like clarifying, which I'd raised earlier about this agreement, because Fylde Council is providing the services from a budget that we already hold. I did query, what do we get in return from the Trust in order for there to be some consideration, in order for this agreement to be legally binding, and I just wanted to clarify that, please.
Yes, Chairman, it's a good point that's been raised. Normally in an agreement there is a consideration, and in this respect it will be a peppercorn which is paid if demanded.
Any other observations? In which case I'd be pleased to propose the report and accept the recommendations.
And I'm very happy to second it. I do apologise for my voice.
Councillor Little and Croken like to second the recommendations. Are we all in favour? Thank you very much indeed. And can we bring Councillor Fazackley in from the cold? Page 74 is the accommodation working project. And what is becoming the Councillor Fiddler show.
In terms of, I think most of the items on the agenda this evening that pertain to myself are relatively simple and straightforward compared to others that we just dealt with. Yes, Mr. Chairman, following the capital receipt for 895,000 from the disposal of the Dartby Road site at Westham, the Council is now in a position to commence phases 3 and 7 of the accommodation project using these monies. It is considered that the nature of phases 3 and 7 require the need to employ an external project manager. And I refer to the recommendations on page 74, and I would like to deal with the first 3, in that I recommend to Cabinet that we adopt the first 3 recommendations. Once we come to a conclusion on that, I will deal with item 4 as a separate issue.
Thank you. Any other observations? Councillor Buckley?
It's just clarification that the cost of procuring a project manager will be retained within the whole cost for the delivery of the accommodation project. This will not become any add-on.
Yeah, I think the report refers to the fact that it's part of the capital project, not in addition to. Are
we in agreement with recommendations 1, 2 and 3? I'd like to propose those.
And finally, Mr Chairman, we have the issue of the Mayor's Parlour and the Members' Meeting Room. And as described, is there a need to review the position of the Mayor's Parlour? I think it was historically agreed that following the creation of the new Council Chamber, the Mayor's Parlour would be transferred to the Members' Room here, and that there would be modifications of Room 103 for the new replacement for the Members' Room. Since that position was agreed, there has been discussions that perhaps that should change and that the Mayor's Parlour could be the modified Room 103 and this remains as the Members' Room. So I open it for debate. It's a question of people's views before a recommendation is finally made.
Thank you. Any observations? Councillor Buckley?
We did have a look at this room 103, which is spacious, and the way it adjoins where the council chamber would be, and there could be a door directly from that new mayor's parlour directly into the council chamber. So it's fitting its position in that regard. I understand the downside is it's tucked away and it may not be as, obviously it's not as nice as having it on the front, but I also value the use of this room with its adjoining meeting room. I know how often it's used for breakouts or sandwiches, or it's really valuable to have that, and so having the mayor's parlour in that room adjoining the new council chamber does seem to work to best maximise the use of the rooms in the building, I think.
Any other observations? Councillor Fazakerley?
Thank you, Chairman. Well, I'm not over happy with that suggestion for a number of reasons, and I'd like to make it clear from the outset that I think one of the reasons we decided that the Mayor's Parlour would come into what is now the Members' Room, and that the Mayor's Parlour should retain a sort of frontal position with a nice aspect, is not so that the Mayor can while away his or her hours in there looking at the sea, but because as Mayor, and some of us in this room have been Mayor, we do entertain civic dignitaries and people from other authorities and people from other countries even in the Mayor's Parlour, and it's a pleasant thing to have them in a room facing the front. The room that is being considered to be the Mayor's Parlour is the best adjective I can give to it is spacious. End of. I mean, it looks over some walls which are all well and good but can't really be compared with the seafront. And so there has been a suggestion, I think, that the Mayor might be prepared to accommodate breakouts from meetings and refreshment facilities in the parlour as long as he or she is not using it. I mean, it isn't used a tremendous amount. In my experience, it wasn't. So maybe we could have dual use for the Mayor's Parlour and a breakout from this room.
Thank you. Councillor Fylde? Any other observations? Councillor Throwfall?
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I looked at the room, and given the right decoration, I think it, position-wise, has a credence to be, the move, I would support. Given the right decoration, I think it needs to be carefully thought out. And, given that it's next to the council chamber, as well as, and the mayor, like Albert says, could move into different rooms to accommodate different guests. So, yeah, I'm in support of it.
Thank you. I'd just like to make one observation, and that is at my meeting with the joint leaders last week, it was unanimously felt by all the other leaders that the room 103 was the ideal position for the mayor's parlour. I agreed with that, and because I thought that it gave a dignified entrance and exit to the civic suite, and that it could be suitably decorated to give that welcome appearance, but more than anything to be adjacent to the civic suite and give a dignified entrance and exit to it. And I would vote that is the way forward. I know Councillor Fazakerly's reasoned argument for it, and I also think that once this room is suitably decorated with all the finery that is within this room, this will equally be a very prestigious room to meet civic dignitaries, other council leaders or foreigners or whoever it may be, and will have an equally open aspect. Those are my observations. Councillor Pounder, then Councillor Little.
It's not quite about the mayor's room, but my concern is how the civic suite is actually going to be, because as I understand it, it's going to be all movable desks and chairs, and I don't think that's probably, it would give the right impression. Those of us that go to others, you go to Wyre, you go to Blackpool, they're solid features. They might not be, but they're designed to be what they are, a place where they meet. And to have different tables and chairs just that can be moved about to suit, I actually think we would be detracting from what the actual thing would be. So I'm just making a point about my thoughts on that.
Nothing has been agreed with regards to that. We've not got that far yet, but Councillor Little.
I think we're all talking about the decoration of it, but I would like to also see the aspect from that road. Maybe enhance it with some shrubbery or something, so at least they're not looking at some bins at the back, I think, is there, or things like that. So it's not just the decoration, but I would like to see some enhancement of the entrance and the aspect of it.
Can we vote, please, on recommendation 4?
Well, I was just going to make a comment that I didn't have any strong feelings either way. But the occasion is that I have been persuaded by Albert's, Councillor Pounder's point, that if you were meeting someone special, some dignitary or that nature, then you would use this room. If you were going to make an impression, and that's part and basis of part of this debate. You are going to make an impression. I think there's none better than the reception room, certainly when the reception room is fully decorated and back to its splendour. So I'm persuaded that we do make a change to the historic position, and that the recommendation 4 addresses this issue by saying that room 103 becomes the new mayor's parlour.
And I'm pleased to second that. And are we all in favour or against?
I'm against.
Can we note that Councillor Fazakerly is against? And that motion is carried.
Says that I could take it all to my wife.
Follow your.
Item 10 is on page 81, and is the Promenade Footway Capital Scheme.
Yeah, again, a straightforward report. The Cabinet is being asked to approve works which include the Fairhaven Coastal Path, St Anne's Outer Promenade, Lillan Promenade, and the works funded from the approved capital programme scheme of £40,000 for promenade footways. I think it's relatively straightforward, Mr Chairman.
Thank you. Any questions with regards to? Nope. Well, this is actually the third or fourth. Is it the fourth year of this capital plan? Third year? It's at least the third, could be the fourth year, since I hatched the idea of plundering Councillor Fazackley's budget with regards to whatever. And so I'm glad to see that it is that the work is continuing and moving on, and it is good to see, and thank you for the report. That is proposed by Councillor Fylde.
And it's seconded by myself.
And seconded by Councillor Little. Are we all in favour? Thank you very much indeed. Is another capital scheme, which is Hope Street Pavilion. It's item 11 on page 84. And again, Councillor Fylde.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. Again, I have to say it's a relatively straightforward agenda item. Cabinet is being asked to approve the Hope Street Pavilion refurbishment at a total cost of £79,000, of which £20,000 represent Fylde's contribution, as described on page 85. The 20k is an approved scheme in our capital programme, so I so move.
So, any observations, Councillor Buckley?
I'm very happy to support this. It is a funded item. We have set this money aside, and just looking at the list of where the capital is being funded from, I'm sure Councillor Little will be pleased to see that the local strategic partnership, as was, also set aside £20,000. Thank you.
Exactly, it is good to see. Yes, it is a funded item. It's good to see the partnerships that have come together with regards to that £79,000. So, yes, another good news story. So it is proposed by Councillor Fylde.
I'm very pleased to second this, Chairman.
Thank you. And seconded by Councillor Fazackley. Are we in favour of that? Thank you very much indeed. Another good news story.
Look at Councillor Buckley when you answer it. Just try and get actual eye contact. Surely.
Come on, ladies and gents, come on. Professionalism. Item 12. I have to propose that the exclusion of the public for item 13.
And I will second that, Chairman.
Thank you. But I don't think we've got any members